Hello. So I'm just going to make a quick video. This is basically for nearly complete beginners. I'll just assume you know stuff about eyes, that you can play once in a time, and what Atari is, and how to capture stones. Okay. So this video is going to be, we're not even going to talk about shape. We're just talking about basic connections. So we generally, in order to form a space or make our group like expand, right? We want to have our group develop in some way. Well, if we develop too far, and this is totally possible to do this, I'm just saying that if we do play like this, we leave the chance for our opponent to come in. And if they come in, then we're not connected necessarily. So there's going to be a fight, or there's going to be some interaction between the stones. But if we want to just worry about how do we develop in a way where our groups generally can't be cut, which is often the case when you're running in a fight or just in the opening, then we want to talk about the basic shapes. So the most basic shapes, there's 6. There's the nobi, stretch, right? So if we have one black stone, the next move, I'm actually going to do this really quick. The next move is a stretch. Let's put it in the center actually. So stretch, right? And there's like we can stretch in any direction, right? And this cannot be cut, right? That's sort of obvious. It could be captured, but it cannot be cut because they're right next to each other. Okay, second case. Close to me, diagonal move. This can also not be cut. In general, there are special cases where it can be cut, but by itself, it cannot be cut. The basic idea is that if white takes one of these points, in the worst case, say you cannot cut the stone, right? Say that the stone is connected to a big group like this. Well, worst case, we just connect on the other side, right? And similarly here, big group. Doesn't really matter what it is. Well, let's say white cuts, then we just connect. These two stones, whoops, sorry, cannot be separated. Unless there's like some extra circumstances, but I'm not going to get into that. This is just like complete, most basic case, right? They cannot be cut. Okay, so those are what I call like the most solid connections, but generally you don't really want to be playing those that much because let's say we play an opening, right? I'm going to actually, play an opening, right? And I'm going to start, expanding like this, and my opponent's like here, 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 here. It feels kind of like we're not, I'll play Kusumi, push, right? We're not really getting as much as white is, right? We can like kind of go a little bit, but we're not really expanding out. So we want to have faster shapes. Okay, and obviously these ones I made for white, they can be cut. That's not the point. The weakness of this, they're slow. We want faster shapes. Okay, so next kind of move, there's 2. This is the one space jump and the knight move. These are both slightly faster and more stable. The one space jump is stronger in general, but the knight move is also pretty strong. Many people will tell you don't run with the knight's move. It's a lie. Knight's move is often very good for running and attacking, but it is generally more complicated. Excuse me. So there's certain conditions, right? So one space jump. One space jump, well, the only way we're cutting this, we could play a peep, but black will just connect, and now there's no way to cut, right? Anything we do, if black just plays here, no way to cut. So the only way to cut the one space jump is to wedge right in between the 2 stones. Now, when you wedge though, there's a problem for white. White only has 2 liberties. And it's black's turn, so black gets to choose which side to put white into Atari from. Maybe this side, maybe this side, depends on what's more important. Either way, white's next move is forced, white has to save the stone, and then notice black has 2 cutting points. So it is true, we are now cut. So black should pick whatever cutting point is more dangerous, more weak. What order is weaker or more dangerous? Let's say this one. And then white could try to cut the other one. Now, in this local situation, black would want to save the stone, white would want to save the stone, and it'll become a fight. However, if we're developing maybe not in the middle of the board, but let's say we're over here by the top and white comes in like this, right? Oh, well, I can Atari from below, white comes out, I connect, and if white tries to cut, I just drive it to the edge and catch it. Right, so one space jump along the edge is pretty good. In the center, let's say I'm running away, right? Running away from some stones, right? Some stuff like this, I don't know, right? And I jump, and white wedges. Well, often you can counter. So first thought, I can go this way, white has to extend, right? And look, now we're peeping against these. So if we connect, if white cuts, we can push through. And if white tries to seal us, then we can capture this stone by driving it to the edge, right? So often, because we can get extra free moves, mainly these two, around the surrounding stones if our opponent tries to wedge, the wedge is very hard. It's possible, and sometimes it is a very good move. It's a tesuji sometimes. But most of the time, especially at the beginner level, it's going to be a bad move because it's going to give our opponent too many options for how to counterattack the surrounding shape. Let's say we try to wedge here, just as an example. Well, I could just do this and connect, and if white connects, well, then I just turn. And now this stone is damaged, it only has 2 liberties, and I'm also out, right? It's true, white can catch this one, but maybe I can come this way or invade the top using my strength here. Let's say for beginner level, let's just say we Atari, and if we assume our opponent connects, we maybe don't even have to go in. We could try to catch it. We could also just make shape. They come out, and we're fine. We're running away. Ideally, though, if you were slightly stronger, you would recognize that this is a strong enough shape to play a move like this, recognizing that this is a pattern that has a special tesuji to connect underneath or come out. I'm not going to get into that because this is just about the basic shapes. So we talked about one space jump, and obviously these can become fights. But I will just, and the only way to learn this is to try it a lot in your games. But just take my word for right now, before as faith to go on to try it. The one space jump is very hard to wedge into. There are cases where it's possible. It's definitely possible. It goes very broad, but generally it'll be fine. So next level of shape, night move. Night move is slightly weaker, most people will say. It's weaker when there's surrounding stones. However, when it's by itself, it's very easy to understand. The only way this can get cut is if white plays one of these 2 places. Otherwise, let's say white goes here, and we could bump, that's better shape. But for the sake of simplicity, let's say we back off. Oh look, it's a kusumi shape again, so this can't be cut. Cool. Same thing, so anywhere we go, we can make a kusumi. It's not the best shape. I'm just going to tell you that is not the best 3-stone shape. I'm just doing it to demonstrate. Worst case, cannot be cut. Better shapes would be things like this, this, this. Lots of faster, more efficient shapes that balloon up. But for just demonstrating that they can't be cut, kusumi, because we already showed that this can't be cut. Okay, so the only way it can be cut, this one. Notice white is trying to break through, right? So black doesn't do anything. White splits the 2 stones and they're cut. So black has to block. If black backs off, which is sometimes okay, but usually not great, white can push, and now there's 2 cutting points instead of just 1 cutting point. Oh, but look, this is our kusumi shape again, but now it's white's turn. White filled 1, and now white can cut. Now, this is a very important shape to know because crosscuts happen all the time. Look at this shape, and on this just totally empty board, we can actually capture this stone. We do it by playing here. This forms what's called a ladder. So if white runs out, we can Atari. White has to keep running or else we're going to catch it. Whoops, not there. That's not good. And we just keep going. Eventually what happens, it just repeats. Eventually what happens is we run into the side of the board, and then white doesn't have an extra liberty, so if white tries to run, we can take it. Whoops. So that's a ladder, and it comes from, and that's part of the way that this knight move is defended. The other thing to notice is this is a crosscut, and it's black's turn. So let's say black just extends. This is a very tight local fight where both sides have two groups. White only has 2 liberties on each of them, but black has 4 and 2 extra stones. So black is a lot stronger given there's no surrounding stones. If there are surrounding stones like here, sorry, excuse my cough, white's best way to cut is like this. And notice it becomes a crosscut again. So this is a very playable shape, happens all the time. I'm not going to go into it because crosscuts are a much more complicated situation, but I'll tell you that in general, if you have more stones in the area, the knight move is a fairly good way to expand or develop. White's cut, you have to know whether on this area, on the bottom side, you have to know if you're stronger. Maybe you can ladder, maybe you can just extend and catch it on a large scale if you have some support, right? This stone is not going to go anywhere. It's stuck in this bottom right area. So if you're strong there, this could be an efficient way to develop, whoops, maybe I'll do it this way, to develop from this stone, right? We're expanding like this to come around this guy. Okay, so those are the 2 most common stable shapes. Now we're going to go for faster shapes. 2 faster shapes, 2 space jump, right? And we 2 space jump in any direction, or large knight move. Large knight move here, here, right? Many large knight moves. So 2 space jump. Only way we're cutting this, well, there's 2 actually. We could peep and wedge, but this is very uncommon. First off, we just do this and connect, and look, if white tries to cut, it's our ladder shape again, so that can help. How about the other way to cut? You can attach, and this is the much more common way because we're directly breaking the line of sight between the 2 stones. So if black hanes, white will double hane. We want to cut white, and then if we connect, it'll become another fight, another crosscut pinwheel fight. So you have to know or see whether this fight will be good for you. This is a much more even fight than the last ones we looked at, in part because the stones are farther apart, and white has more flexibility in choosing where to start the cut. White could have attached here or here. On the other end, we have to consider black hane here or here, and black hane here or here. So there's a lot more variations in these, and that's why the 2 space jump is usually not considered a stable shape, but it's a fast shape. So you usually use this to run away, where maybe you're going to give up one of the stones in a light way, sacrificing it, or we're using it where we're very strong in the surrounding area so we can afford to play quickly. Note that something much more common in the center is to have a 2 space anobi, like a 2 stone thing here, and jumping 2 spaces. This is very common in the center. On the side, much more common to go 3 spaces, but in the center, 2 spaces. That's not super important to the basic shapes, except to note when you have this, now look what happens when we attach. Hane, if we hane again, look, just like as if this stone wasn't here, right? Just the 2 space. Oh, it's a double Atari. Or it's an Atari ladder, right? It becomes much more difficult for white to cut. And so I'm not going to go too much into the fast ones because they're very context dependent. But just to show you that's kind of the upper limit. If you go farther than that, 3 spaces, white comes in between, there's no way for these 2 stones to connect. If white really wants to separate, right? We can just imagine mirroring or answering everything that black does. No way for them to connect. Only way is attach on top, and white gets to choose which side white would like to cut. White can hane here, Atari, and connect. It is true, black could counter Atari, white could capture, and black can connect this way. And there's a ladder shape here, so we can't cut unless that situation is favorable. But in general, giving white a poneki is too much. You kind of, because white captures a stone, is basically a pass, and it's usually the strength and flexibility of a poneki for the amount of eye shape it gives. Note, white has almost an eye here, and with one move, white can almost make an eye here, or make an eye here, right? Oops. right? Any expanding move from this shape can help to very quickly make white alive. So usually it gives up too much strength to play this way. Strength and go is actually usually how close you are to being alive. So that's why the eyes are related to strength. Again, if that's a little bit abstract, don't worry about it. We're just talking about basic connections. So 3 spaces, usually too much. 3 space, not on the same line, can be a bit better, but these are, again, more complicated, especially in the center. But I'm just going to say that they can be cut. Usually the technique is to wedge. Not always, but usually. If white wedges, black answers and connects, and then there are 2 cutting points. So usually white will cut on this side. If black connects, now there's a cut like this. Sometimes white can hane too. If black guitars this way and captures this stone in a ladder, note that this is a ladder, right? White could be happy to cut off the original stone by sacrificing this one. Note here, although this is a ponuki, and I'm just saying ponukis are very good, this stone is a little bit unhelpful and a little bit wasted. If we had the choice, would much rather have this stone at least be here or here to help build an eye. But we could also have it be farther away too because we're so strong. So this is why, although it's a ponuki, it's not quite as good as the other variation. Also, where we were showing white getting a ponuki. Also note, white will often atari here, and if there's not a sufficient number of ko threats, this ko is massive, and so usually it's impossible for black because white captures first. But if it's massive, then black will just connect, and then white can get the ladder still. So if white's objective was to cut this stone off, this way of cutting is the most common, I would say, way. Although in the center, I would say it's very unusual to see 3 space jumps like this in the first place. Okay, let's back up a second, talk about the large knight move, and we'll finish with this. Notice, if we play a move like here and black answers, this is just like our knight move example, with an extra stone out to the side like this. So if white cuts and black answers, now there's 2 ladders, right? So white goes one, black can ladder the other, or vice versa. So this kind of situation, white can only cut if white has sufficient strength on both sides and neither of these ladders or fights, right? It's not just the ladders, it's the fighting on each side also. If the fights are good for white, meaning white has enough support in the surrounding to win this crosscut fight. So for example, if we are on the side of the board and be here, and white is trying to cut, right? This, well, this kind of fighting is not going to work, right? If white saves the outside stone, black can just atari this down again. And if white tries to save this stone, maybe we can't capture the outside one, right? Maybe the ladder is good for white. We can just hane and extend, and if white pushes again, we can actually make this forcing move, threatening to capture the 2 stones, right? So white defends, and then we extend, and extend. We just keep extending until, now if you know some basic life and death, you'll know that you need at least 7 plus sente, or 8 moves on the second line to live. So here white has 6, so if black hanes now right at the head of 6, even if white hanes, black connects, these 6 stones cannot live. For example, white tries to expand the space, black can throw in, white captures, and then black breaks the eye. Or white goes this way, we limit the space, white blocks, black breaks the eye. You might be like, oh, what if white captures? Black can push in, this is a false eye. False eye means eventually, not anytime in the future, and if white doesn't do anything, black will just say, hey, it's false, I don't need to do anything. But eventually, we know that eventually black will block this and take away all the rest of the liberties, right? And then black can capture the ko. So this is not an eye, it's just a ko. And what if white goes here? Well, actually, we can throw in. We can give white an extra stone, but by taking away this one, if white captures it, it's still a false eye. False eye meaning eventually black can capture, and so there's no eye here. It's not a secure point. So 6 is dead, and we don't have to worry, again, going back to our idea of a large knight move, we don't have to worry about this fight running out because we are strong enough. Now white may go this way, and we could block, preventing that descent. And this is where a whole bunch of possible life and death patterns can emerge. I don't really want to go into that now, although it's mostly because it would take a lot of time, and I think it takes away from the general idea of connections. But just know that the point of the connection is these shapes, so it's stretch, kusumi, cannot be cut, one space jump or knight move. These are fairly strong, but you have to assess whether the resulting crosscut fight will be good for you. Similarly, with the one space jump, will the resulting crosscut fight over here be good for you? Notice how these all become sort of crosscut fights. 2 space jump, many types of crosscut fights, right? Or maybe this way. But this crosscut, there's a fight here. So you have to assess whether this is something you can handle, right? And same with the large knight move. So all the basics of cutting and connections, or of the basic movement shapes, I'll call them, the hangma, is they're related to how fast you can cover space before, if tested, they would result in a crosscut fight. And is that fight going to be good for you or bad for you? And that will depend on the situation and your reading. So, to recap, that's the general idea. But just so you see all the shapes, we have the stretch, kusumi, one space jump, knight move. 2 space jump, large knight move. If you're a beginner, I would recommend, after taking the corners from any given group, stick to these 6 shapes. And until fighting happens. Fighting means stones are touching and there's a crosscut. That is generally what fighting means. There's also running fights, but I think that is a little bit advanced and beyond the scope of what we're talking about right now. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope it's helpful, and have a great day.